In Medina, there was a Jewish woman who despised the Prophet, PBOH. Every day when he passed by her house, she would insult him, mock him, and even throw garbage and dirt on him. The Prophet, PBOH, never reacted with anger. Instead, he remained calm and continued on his way without responding to her abuse. One day, as the Prophet, PBOH, walked past her house, he noticed that she was not there. Concerned, he asked a neighbor, "Where is the woman who used to insult me?" The neighbor replied, "She is sick and bedridden." Upon hearing this, the Prophet, PBOH, immediately went to visit her. When the sick woman saw him standing by her bed, she was shocked and weakly asked, "You are the one I insulted every day. Why have you come to see me?" The Prophet, PBOH, smiled gently and said, "It is a duty in our religion to visit the sick. I came to check on your health." Tears welled up in the woman's eyes as she looked at the Prophet, PBOH, with deep emotion. She said, "Your religion is the truth. No one can be so kind and forgiving unless they are truly sent by God." Right then and there, she recited the Shahada and embraced Islam. One day, a poor man approached the Prophet, PBOH, and complained about his hardships, saying that he could no longer bear the struggles of life and wanted to ask people for help. The Prophet, PBOH, looked at him kindly and asked, "Do you have anything in your house?" The man replied, "We only have a small bowl and a blanket." The Prophet, PBOH, asked him to bring them. When the man returned with the items, the Prophet, PBOH, took them to the marketplace and sold them. With the money, he bought the man an axe and handed it to him, saying, "Go and use this to collect firewood and sell it. Come back to me in 2 weeks and tell me what you have done." The man followed his advice, gathered firewood and sold it. After 2 weeks he returned to the Prophet, PBOH, with a bright smile and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I worked hard and earned some money. I even managed to buy food for my family." The Prophet, PBOH, smiled and said, "See, isn't it better to earn your own living than to ask others for help?" From that day on, the man never begged again and became one of the best woodcutters in Medina. One day, while the Prophet, PBOH, was sitting in the mosque, an ignorant and rude man approached him and began to insult him with harsh and disrespectful words. The Prophet's companions were enraged and wanted to throw the man out of the mosque, but the Prophet, PBOH, gestured for them to remain calm. Then he looked at the man with kindness and said, "If you still have more to say, go ahead." The man was taken aback and fell silent. After a moment he asked, "Why don't you defend yourself? Why don't you shout back at me?" The Prophet, PBOH, smiled and replied, "Because I was sent to spread kindness and peace, not anger and hatred." Hearing these words, the man lowered his head in shame. He was so moved by the Prophet's, PBOH, patience and wisdom, that he immediately declared, "I testify that you are truly the messenger of God," and accepted Islam on the spot. One day, as the Prophet, PBOH, walked through a garden in Medina, he noticed a camel approaching him, making sorrowful sounds. Tears streamed down the animal's face as it moved toward him and gently rested its head on his shoulder. The Prophet, PBOH, softly stroked the camel's head and then asked the people, "Who owns this camel?" A man from the crowd stepped forward and said, "O Messenger of Allah, this camel belongs to me." The Prophet, PBOH, looked at the man with concern and said, "Do you not know that this camel has complained about you? It is suffering from hunger and mistreatment." The man was ashamed and lowered his head. He immediately promised to take better care of the camel and treat it with kindness from that day forward. One day, a woman came to the Prophet, PBOH, and told him that her father had died before Islam and was buried in a well. She asked if she could retrieve his body and bury him in a proper grave. The Prophet, PBOH, was silent for a moment and then gave her permission. When the body was brought out, to everyone's astonishment, it was completely intact without any sign of decay.
Check 1, check 2, check.
The Prophet, PBOH, then said, "This is the result of his good deeds. Even in the times of ignorance there were righteous people, and Allah shows mercy to them." This story reminded people that kindness and good character are rewarded, regardless of time or place.